presentation. This is the 17 coolest metrics that LogMyCalls extracted from phone calls in Q1 and Q2. It should be a really good presentation from McKay Allen. This is Mike Williams speaking. I'm the network manager here at RingPartner, and so we're really happy to have McKay here to help present on this very interesting topic. Just a little marketing Jedi and a one-man lead generation powerhouse by Direct Marketing News. Currently, McKay is the content marketing manager at LogMyCalls, and he directs the content, PR, and demand generation cycle and strategy. So based on that profile, you can see why we're very excited to have McKay here with us today to present on this very interesting topic. For those of you that are interested in LogMyCalls, definitely check them out on social media. They're very active on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube, and definitely check out their blog and their webinar series. They have a number of very good relevant webinars related to phone calls. So definitely check that out. At this point, I will pass things on to McKay to take it from here, and I'm very excited to hear what he has to say. Go ahead, McKay. Thanks.
Thanks, Mike. That was a great introduction. Appreciate it. Thanks for having us. I think we've done one other webinar together, Mike, if I remember correctly. A few months ago, Mike was a guest on our webinar series, and he asked us then to appear on his, and so we're really excited to do so. So thanks in advance, Mike and RingPartner. You guys are great. So let's just jump into the content if we can. Mike gave me a good introduction. The only other two things to mention are our webinar series, which has a ton of great stuff on it, logmycalls.com/webinar. We've got probably over 125 hours of free content on there. You can just go to the URL and watch the webinars. It's great stuff. In a previous life, I was a news anchor and reporter for local TV stations in the western United States. And I am married and have two sons. So they are 3 and 10 months. So my house is a happening place. So let's get right into what is LogMyCalls and what do we do. So you're probably familiar if you're in the lead gen world with call tracking. We provide call tracking and call reporting, but we take it to the next step. We also provide business intelligence and call analytics, lead scoring and deep analytics for the phone. We call this tool conversation analytics. And we were, last year about this time, declared the winner of the Global Startup Grand Prize Challenge from Amazon Web Services. There were 2,500 companies that competed, and we won. So that was a big honor for us. So let's talk about phone calls. If you're on this webinar, you probably get the importance of phone calls, but I'll just briefly brush over this. $73 billion was spent on advertising in 2013 to drive phone calls. This is all according to BIA Kelsey, their local marketing analyst group. They say 64% of direct marketing and local businesses say that calls are the best leads they receive. So calls are more likely to convert, they're more likely to turn into revenue, they're simply better than other sources. And then this is really interesting. Mobile search, we all know what's happening with mobile search and click-to-call. They say that calls from mobile search will top about 73 billion in 2018. So these are direct actions following a mobile search on a smartphone. That's a big deal. So calls matter, literally a river of phone calls. So let's talk about what traditional call tracking is compared to what we do. And as I said, we do provide traditional call tracking, but I think it's important to place into proper context how maybe we're a little different, just so you can understand how we got this data. So traditional call tracking, you understand it. It'll provide you raw number of phone calls, referring source. So for example, how many phone calls were generated from this campaign or this affiliate. That's traditional call tracking. That's great. It'll provide you some keyword data for paid campaigns, obviously, and then it'll give you call durations and call recording, as I said. So traditionally in the lead gen space specifically, the value of a call has been determined predominantly by call duration. So a call over 3 minutes is worth X, and a call under 3 minutes is worth Y. That's traditionally how it's been done. That's not an inaccurate way to do it, but there are better ways to do it, we believe. The problem with call tracking inherently, and again, we provide call tracking, so we're kind of ripping on us here as well, is call tracking stops after the phone rings, obviously. There is a lot of data that is gathered before the phone rings, and call tracking does all that. It's great. But it doesn't provide any data about what happens after the phone rings, and that's a problem because a lot of really important things happen after the phone rings, right? That's when transactions are made. That's when purchases are made. That's when reservations are made and appointments are booked. So 420 billion words are spoken each day on business phone calls between businesses themselves and their prospects and customers. And most of those words, almost none of those words are being analyzed. So they're not being mined for data, and that's where we step in. A lot happens after the phone rings that is important. So that's why we created a tool called Conversation Analytics. And let me explain how this works and what it is and what it does. So basically what we do is we run all the calls that come through our system through our proprietary speech recognition engine. And it analyzes the calls. It analyzes it for words and for phrases and for intonation and for speed and for pitch and for all the things that could tell us what happened on the call. Our goal is to be able to extract from the call automatically what happened on that phone call. So was it a good lead? Was it a bad lead? Was there a missed opportunity for an additional upsell? How did the agent perform? What were their sales skills? Did they ask good questions? And then what was the lead score? What campaign is producing really good leads? Was there a conversion on the call, most importantly? Was there an appointment booked or a sale made? What happened on the phone call? That's what we're trying to figure out. And so we literally, what we did is we built on top of proprietary speech recognition platform, as I mentioned, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of algorithms that literally search the content of the call and provide sort of a fully baked data set that comes out the other side. So that's the data we're going to talk about today. How does it work? Here's just another visual representation. Call comes in. It runs through our analytics engine. We're able to say, okay, was this a junk call? Was there a missed opportunity? Did they mention a competitor? What's the lead score? How price sensitive are they? Tons of things we can pull out of the phone calls themselves. So call tracking tells you what happens before the call. Conversation analytics tells you what happens on the call. So let's get into the call report itself. So in Q1, and we're actually just finishing the compilation of the data for Q2, what we did is we looked through our system, and we analyzed millions of calls in Q1, and we wanted to look at the analysis from every single one of those, and they're across dozens of industries. So any industry that cares about phone calls at all, we analyzed phone calls for in Q1. And we then wanted to compile that and just look at some high-level aggregate data. Now, before I jump into the data, I want to just preface this by saying, first and foremost, we understand that there's going to be variances based on the industry. So if you're in the mortgage space or the paid EDU space, your calls are going to be much longer, right? And your conversion rates may be higher or lower. If you're in the service industry and you're generating calls for somebody in the HVAC world, or they're a plumber, or the auto repair space, well, your calls are going to be shorter and your conversion rates are going to be different. So we get that. We didn't try to, for the purposes of this data, separate that out. So anyway, just for what that's worth, we're going to come out with some industry-specific data in the next few months, but just so you understand the context. So let's talk about leads. What we found from all the millions of phone calls that ran through our system that we analyzed in Q1, we found that 29% of them were great leads and 28% of them were good leads. Now, what does that mean? Well, the calls are analyzed for lead quality, as we said, and that's based on the phrases and keywords that are pulled out of the call by our speech analytics engine. And then we assign every single call a lead score from 0 to 100. So somebody that was asking for directions to the local Mexican restaurant, and it was clearly a wrong number call, that's a lead score of 0, right? But somebody who calls in and buys on the first call has a lead score of 100. They're very interested in purchasing. So what we're doing is affixing a lead score to every call. It's similar to what companies like Eloqua and Marketo and HubSpot are doing for online leads. We're doing the same thing for phone calls. Lead scoring for phone calls is what we do. So we defined a great lead as any lead between 80 and 100, And we define a good lead as any lead between 60 and 79, actually. I just accidentally put 80 in there. So 60 and 79, 80 to 100. And we found that great leads, there were 29% of the calls that came through our system that were great leads. 28% were good leads. So ultimately, this allows marketers to judge campaigns not just on the number of calls they produce, but on the quality of calls they produce. So we have agencies that we work with, for example, who are now billing their clients not based on a monthly retainer, or even here's the raw number of calls that we push to you, we're going to charge you X number of dollars per call. What they're saying is we're going to bill you a certain amount for great leads, and a certain amount for good leads, and a certain amount for fair leads and average leads and bad leads. They're able to do that now because of the data that we provide. So if you're in the sort of lead gen affiliate space, my goodness, if you're in the paid EDU world, you're going to pay a lot of money for a great lead. You just are, because they're more likely to buy. And we've got some data that's actually coming out later this month that shows how much more likely a great lead is to buy than a good lead. And it's incredible. So it matters. It also allows you to judge your campaigns based on the number of good and great leads, and your affiliates based on good and great leads they produce. So you have more visibility and more data about what's actually happening on the phone. Now let's talk about missed opportunities. This is a huge deal, both in the call center world and the world of distributed environments. So we work with clients that have 2,000 or 3,000 retail locations. They get phone calls. They're able to track with precision which agents at which locations are missing the most opportunities. Same thing in the call center world. So what we found in Q1 was that 42% of the calls that came into our system were sales inquiries, and 46% of those are missed opportunities. Again, that's determined by two things. Number one, was their lead score either good or great, and they did not convert. That's how we define a missed opportunity. Was their lead score good or great, and they didn't convert? Now, there can be a lot of factors that influence missed opportunity. It could be the quality of the agent's salesmanship on the phone. Maybe they didn't ask for the business directly. Maybe they were rude, impolite, whatever. Or it could be that the caller became confused with regards to pricing, or that once they figured out the price, they were more pricing sensitive than it appeared. Or they just got irritated by help. And we literally have clients that are salvaging missed opportunities same day, once they get these alerts in their systems, in their various SaaS platforms that are automated from our tool. So it's saving revenue. It's not just passive data. It's about saving revenue in near real time. So as I said, good or great leads that didn't convert, there's a variety of factors that could influence that. And then I mentioned how we have an alerts and notification system that will tell you when there are missed opportunities. The other thing that's interesting to note with the data, is asking for the business. How often does that happen? How frequently do your agents ask for the business? Now you can see this 10.4 times number. If an employee asks for the business, the caller's 10.4 times more likely to convert. It matters a lot. Statistically, it matters. So it's pretty disturbing when we find that in 87% of the cases, the agent did not ask for the business. So if you're sending calls to a call center, you need to be aware of this data. If you're sending calls to clients, you need to be aware of this data. How well are they handling the callers that you are sending them? These are high-quality leads. And if they're not being asked if they want to be a customer, that's a problem. Statistically, that's a problem. So you're gonna produce more revenue if they ask for the business. What does that mean? Well, it's a direct invitation for the caller to become a customer. Here's two very basic examples. We have an opening at 2 o'clock. Can we get you set up? That's a direct invitation. That's asking for the business. When that happens, the caller is 10.4 times more likely to convert. Why don't we go ahead and reserve the room? in the hotel world. It's kind of a very obvious, basic example we've all heard. So point being, it matters, and yet very few people are doing it on a consistent basis, which is pretty staggering if you think about it. And the other thing I would echo what Mike said a moment ago, please ask questions. Type them in now. I'll probably just address them at the conclusion unless it's like a clarifying thing. But do it, ask questions. I'm interested in your feedback on this data. Conversion rate. This is maybe the most important metric the tool tracks. Was there a conversion on the call? And what we found in Q1, over all of the millions of calls we analyzed, 29% of them resulted in a conversion. 29% of all the calls we analyzed in Q1 resulted in a conversion. What does that mean? It means that one of the following 4 things happened on that call. First, an appointment was set. In some industries, that's the preferred action, right? In some industries, an appointment set is what you want them to do. In other industries, you want them to buy something over the phone. So it could be a sale actually being made, a credit card actually being given over the phone. Reservation made. So we know the industries where you would reserve something, right? Something like an equipment rental or car rental or hotel or whatever. So reservation being made. And then the fourth one is a little more complex. It's called a commitment to buy. That's going to happen in very high dollar industries, mortgage, cars, technology. So when someone calls us, we don't have very many people call and buy over the phone. What they'll do is they'll call and request that we send them a contract, whether we sent them an RFP or something like that. And so that's oftentimes how a conversion is measured within the tool. So it really just depends on the industries in which you're working, which one of these 4 things are going to be a conversion. So, excuse me. So the 29% of the calls, one of these 4 things happened. So the question I have for you, and I should have done this as a poll. Maybe I will real quick, actually, in a moment. I'll just throw it up in a couple moments. Is what is your conversion rate? I'm curious to get your feedback on this. Why don't you type in the question area, actually, either what your conversion rate is, or if you're not the advertiser, if you're not the end receiver of these calls, what are the conversion rates of the calls that you're sending someone? I'm just curious to get a few responses. So what's the conversion rate you think it is? Okay. Good stuff. Keep sending in your responses. I'm just curious what the number is. Okay, so we've got kind of all over the map. We've got some people saying their conversion rates are in their 40s and 50s, others saying that they don't know, and then others saying that it's 10 to 15%. What we find is that 2 things, and don't get me wrong, if you know this number, then you're not in this group I'm talking about, so don't be offended at what I'm about to say. But we find that most people don't actually know. They kind of guess, but they don't actually know what the number is for the calls they're converting. The second thing we find is that people assume that it's much higher than it is. So, for example, we do a lot of work in the auto repair industry, and we have a large client who assumed their conversion rate was in the 40s. They just guessed that based on hearing their sales guys on the phone. Well, what our analysis found was actually closer to 12%. So they were way off, and we see that universally. It's usually much lower than what you think. I don't know what that means, but that's just what the data shows us. So what we found, again, across all industries is 29% of calls converted in Q1. That's going to depend on your industry, obviously, and depend on the lead score and all that stuff. So conversion rate. Now, what was the conversion action? What was the breakdown? As I said, this adds up to 29%. Appointment, dentist, doctors, tires, auto, plumbers, HVAC, commitment to buy, SaaS, B2B, or big ticket, reservation made, hotel, spa, rental car equipment, purchase made. So you can see the breakdown of how that works and how we got to 29%. And this is probably more of a statement as to who our clients are. We probably have more clients in the appointment set world than we have in these other worlds right now, and so that's why that number's higher. But it's sort of interesting to see how it breaks down. Here's a bonus section. The average call length that we analyzed in Q1 was 4 minutes and 9 seconds. The average number of words in each call was 528. That's an average. And that is actually a quote-unquote real average where we took out the top and bottom 10% that had some outliers. so that's going to be very accurate. And the calls between 30 and 60 seconds were 6%, calls between 60 and 90 were 16, and the calls over 90 seconds were 78%. So again, just some high-level data for you there. Now the main question we get asked, and I'll save you the trouble of asking in the question area, is how accurate is this? We're finding on a call-by-call basis, it's about 94% accurate. So we're getting the gist of the call about 95% of the time. The word-for-word accuracy is about 89%. So what that means is if you were to look at a transcription of the call, we'd get 89% of the words correct, which I think it sounds high. There is about 10% of the words that we miss. What we find, though, is that really doesn't matter in getting the gist of the call and figuring out, was this a good lead? Did they convert? Things like that. And the reason I say that is, that, for example, if my wife calls me right now and says, hey, I need you to pick up some milk on your way home from work. Well, I'm not going to be able to tell you every word she said. I'm not going to write it down. I'm probably, frankly, not going to be listening to every word she says because I'm a human. But I am going to get the gist of the call. I am going to know that she wanted me to get milk. And that's the idea with what we're trying to do here, is provide you with what happened on the call at a high level. The second sort of analogy that I like to use is you can see the number of words in the phone call, 528. A lot of people have had a bad experience with Siri, for example, on your iPhone. Maybe you ask where you can buy some new pants, and instead you're given directions to a local Chinese restaurant, right? We've all had that experience with Siri or with Google Voice Search. The problem with those things in the comparison with what we're doing is the average query on those tools is about 6 words, right? So when you give Siri a query, let's say that 10 times fast, you're giving them about 6 words. If they miss one, you're going to miss the whole context of the statement. If you miss 20 words in a 500-word call, it's not the end of the world. We're still going to get the gist, and it's not going to be a big deal. So anyway, just to give you a sense of how it works. And this is going to vary widely depending on industry. I want to jump into some more data real quick here, and then we'll open it up to questions even more. I'll go for probably another about 10 minutes. So the other thing we wanted to track is we said, okay, 29% of the calls converted, but what was different about those converted calls? In other words, what was different about them than non-converted calls? So we analyzed that difference, and here's what we found. We found some very statistically significant data that shows us what the difference is between them. First, converted calls were 42% longer than non-converted calls. So calls in which there were a conversion event were longer. Now, is this causal? Like, does a longer call actually produce a conversion? And not really, but kind of. What we found is that the longer the agent had them on the call, the more they were trying to convert them. So it's kind of a chicken or the egg argument, right? I mean, you don't want to keep somebody on the phone for 7 minutes just to see if they'll convert. But on the other hand, you do want to keep them on the phone for 7 minutes to ask them questions and to talk to them and to figure out exactly what they need. So longer calls convert more. Let's just put it that way. And there are some very interesting thresholds at which that happens, which we're going to release in the next couple months. Agents ask for the business 3 times more frequently on converted calls than non-converted calls. This isn't a surprise given the data we saw earlier, that you're far more likely to convert when you ask for the business, and yet 87% of the time agents do not ask for the business. So that was a big differentiator in terms of an ingredient of a converted call versus the ingredients of a non-converted call. But lest your call center people and your sales people get blamed for everything for non-conversions, lead score matters a ton. Lead score is 65% higher on converted calls than non-converted calls. So one of the ways that we have used this, and our clients are now using this, is they're saying, okay, which campaigns are producing high-quality calls? So they're finding the specific keyword groups in AdWords or the specific banner ads or the specific sources that are generating high-quality calls. So lead quality does matter. It matters a great deal, but it doesn't matter, interestingly, as much as you would think. It matters less, for example, than the rep asking for the business. So just keep that in mind as you're talking to your call center folks or to your clients who manage call centers or who have some sort of say in what happens on the phone call. And then this is interesting. I wanted to share this because this is a fascinating sort of formula. And the way this works is what we wanted to do is we wanted to look through all the converted calls and say, okay, are there some commonalities? Are there things here that that really can give us a sense as to what produces a converted call? So we developed sort of this formula for converting 80% of your calls. And what we found is across our entire call database, millions of phone calls in Q1, if 8 of these 9 things happened on the phone call, 80% of the calls converted. So it's literally a formula that will produce 80% conversions on your calls. It worked across industries, and it worked across millions of phone calls. It's definitely statistically significant data. So first, if the agent compliments the caller, if the agent is polite to the caller, if the agent gets the caller's address. So this doesn't need to be a street address. Just, hey, where are you from? Oh, I'm in Cleveland. LeBron James might be in Cleveland soon, by the way. We're still waiting to figure that out for those of you who follow the NBA. But anyway, agent gets the caller's name. Agent gets the caller's phone number. It's a sales inquiry, meaning the caller isn't asking for directions or dialing the wrong phone number. The agent asks directly for the business. Of course, that one's in there. Ownership language. The agent used ownership language, things like I can help you with that, or you've called the right place. And determine needs, asking open-ended questions, multiple open-ended questions. And again, you only need 8 of these. So even if you don't get their phone number, if you do all these other things, you're going to convert calls at 80%. You just are. That's what the data says. Same thing with if you just want to leave out getting their or complimenting them. It's kind of hard to compliment a caller, right? Like, hey, your voice sounds beautiful. But generally, it's more like good question or something like that. But my point is, you could leave out one of these and still convert 80% of your calls. It's literally a formula. Now, I want to jump into just to give you a sense of the data we can extract, because calls really are a fertile field of data, and they're an untapped fertile field of data, right? No one has ever gone through and tried to harvest this data from phone calls before. So we've got a white paper. I can send it to you in the email that will accompany this webinar, just that it will have the the webinar recording in it. I'll send you this white paper so you can see the 45 sort of baseline analytics we can extract. There are some more advanced analytics that we're building right now and that we have rolled out actually. But these are the 45 sort of baseline analytics that are discussed in this white paper that I'll send you. So I want to just talk about a couple high-level case studies. These are just a couple of clients that I talked to this week, last couple weeks actually, that I just thought I would highlight. Plus, I like that picture, I mean, my goodness. So this is a hotel in the Bahamas. They were spending a lot of money, millions, to market across the eastern seaboard, particularly, though, in Atlanta and the Carolinas. The reason they were doing that is because they knew that the majority of the flights that came to their island were coming from Atlanta. So they figured, gosh, people are driving to Atlanta from wherever their home is to fly in, so we're going to market around that area. And they weren't tracking conversion rates. Well, what they found when they started to track where their conversions were coming from was that they were able to track conversion by zip code and even area code. And what they found was that their conversions were actually happening higher on the eastern seaboard. So New York, Boston, Rhode Island, Connecticut, those areas were actually converting. So they were getting a conversion rate of, let's say, 8 to 10% around Atlanta, but you get farther north, they're getting conversion rates in the 30 to 40% range. So suddenly, they are marketing more effectively because they know where geographically to target, and then they also were able to track conversion rates. So their team knows that they're being recorded and their conversion rates are being tracked, and so what happens? Well, they improve because they try harder. And so their conversion rate improved 157% in 6 months. Their average daily rate is up as a hotel. Their percentage of the hotel that is full every night is up, and it's because of this data. Plus, I like looking at that picture, as I said. National Efficiency Systems. They're a SAS based in Canada. They wanted to integrate with their property management system. They wanted to integrate, their data systems within their clients, who are property management companies, into their SaaS products. So they wanted to be able to provide their client data like traffic to appointment and cost per lease and missed opportunities. So what they started to do is they now send their clients missed opportunity notifications. They're able to put this all in via the API and integrate it with their systems and their client systems. And they're also able to track close rate data. So their clients now. This is remember, this company, NES, National Efficiency Systems, is not the one who ultimately, quote unquote, cares about the end phone call, right? They're just about generating the phone calls and providing data and providing a sort of a CRM. But now that they are providing data about what happens on the phone, missed opportunities and close rates, their clients are thrilled with them. This is a client of ours that's in the direct mail space, Money Mailer, one of the largest direct mailers in the world. They were, their franchises were losing clients because they weren't able to show ROI and conversions, and they were not tracking missed opportunities for clients. So they started to implement this across the national franchises, and they're saving. We've talked to several franchises, and the franchises universally tell us they're saving several clients a month. Because they're able to tell their clients, okay, wait a second, maybe the reason you're not generating more revenue is because your people aren't very good on the phone or your processes aren't very good. So they're able to give their clients a massive amount of visual, visibility, that's the word, into their marketing strategies and show them the true value of what they do. And so the whole idea here is to provide, because I mean these are first-rate companies that I just mentioned, right? They're not afraid of the data. They're not scared of the data. To be frank, we run into some companies that they actually don't want to know the data, right? They're a little worried that maybe they're not doing as good of a job for their clients, or the affiliates are worried they're not doing maybe as good of a job for the lead buyers or the lead aggregators as they should be. And so they don't want this data public. They don't want it visible. But what we're finding is companies that care really do. And so it's tons of visualization, tons of visibility into the data itself. So again, just a few use cases. You received alerts for missed opportunities. You can append lead scores to CRM records. These are just some examples. You can even create nurture campaigns in your marketing automation tool based on conversions or lead scores. You can track conversion rate and even track the sales performance of agents down to did they ask open-ended questions and did they ask for the business. So you're talking about stuff that is really high-level data in terms of how it's extracted, but it's very granular in terms of the specific data that is extracted. And then, of course, we have our API and our webhooks generator that allow us to integrate with basically any SaaS platform that has an API. So, again, I recognize on the webinar right now, I recognize a lot of the companies that are on here in terms of, you know, we've exhibited with you at LeadsCon or we've seen you at these events, and you know, this is a great tool. I know some of your business models, and providing this type of data is going to be useful. So let's see, action items. We have a 30-day free trial if you want to try it out. No obligation. And then, of course, start automating actions via the API and webhooks. That's how you can access me, Allen at LogMyCalls.com, or on Twitter, McKay Allen. And then, of course, our webinar series. Tons of good stuff on there. You don't even need to register for the recordings. It's good stuff. So, and with that, Mike, I think I'll take some questions. Any questions you have for me, or any thoughts or clarifications that you think we should get into before we start to go through some of the questions, Mike?
Yeah, I just had a couple, they're not questions, just sort of statements, things that I found that were kind of quite interesting, and I think it's something that we've realized being in this space in the pay-per-call business, is that there's a lot of factors that play into a successful campaign. It's not like a traditional online marketing campaign where you submit the lead or you show the user the landing page and they do what they need to. But having poor sales agents seems to be a really sort of a common issue, and it was really interesting to hear that you know, just simply asking for the business, and if the sales agent forgets to do that, that can really impact the conversion rate, not only for the advertiser but also for the publisher, because our publishers convert on duration. So they need the callers to stay on the line, and if the sales agent forgets to you know, make sure that they stay on the line and ask for the business, right, that their lead quality is going to look really poor. And so that was really interesting that lead quality was less determinant on than having the rep actually ask for the business to determine whether it's a good call or not. So I thought that was really interesting. And then and I just found some really interesting things. And you know, sort of that formula for converting. I mean, just going through that list is such a great tool for advertisers to see as a suggestion. It's definitely something I want to talk with our advertisers about, and just as they're onboarding and getting started with us, we should talk about that formula for converting and say you need to implement these with your call center and your sales agents, and you'll have a better performance, and overall they'll have a better experience with RingPartner and with the call. So I thought that was really quite an insightful presentation, and really enjoyed it. So I'm curious to see what the questions are, but those are some interesting things that I pulled out of it, and I really appreciate the presentation that you gave today. So thanks for that.
Thanks, Mike. So I'm seeing the questions, Mike. Should I just read those, and then maybe
Sure.
we can both address those as we go? Does that work?
Yeah, I think I'll chime in if there's something that's relevant, but otherwise we'll leave it up to you, and read them out and then go ahead and answer them.
Okay. Let's see. Russell asks, he says, do you know the average conversion rate for calls between 1 and 2.5 minutes in length? Yeah, we do. So what we're doing right now is we're putting together data. I don't have it at my fingertips, so I guess the short answer is no, not today, I don't know that. But what we're doing is we're putting together data to say, okay, what is the conversion rate for leads between 80 and 100? What's the conversion rate for leads between 60 and 79? And then on down through for various things. So like what's the conversion rate when a sales skill is between 0 and 20, or when a length is between 1 and 2.5 minutes. So there's all these things and that we have conversion rates for based on different variables. So I don't have that data today, Russell, but yes, the system can pull that data if that's what you're asking. I see people asking about accuracy again. As I said, the best way to determine accuracy is to test it out, to see if it works. Now, I will contrast this, and there's a couple of ways to. So let me be clear. There's a lot of great companies in the call analytics space. Really good companies. There's a lot that do sort of standard call tracking really well. There's some that are branching into the deeper call analytics space. There's some that provide you with a transcription and allow you a certain number of terms you can search for in the call to see if certain things to see if certain terms were said or words or phrases were said. Those are great tools. It has a little different application than what we do. We like to think of our tool as sort of a fully baked thing. Instead of giving you the raw ingredients, we're going to give you a lead score. So instead of telling you how many times the word price was said, we're going to give you their pricing sensitivity on a 0 to 100 scale. So that's sort of a compare and contrast. In terms of accuracy, it's very accurate. It's just you got to try it. But total call accuracy is above 90%, and so we get the gist right, the vast majority of the time. Ironically, it's actually more accurate. So we offered call scoring that was manual, human call scoring for a long time, 10 years. That's how we kind of started in the call world. And what we find actually is that automated call scoring, automated conversation analytics we call it, is actually more accurate because humans make mistakes, they get tired, they miss words. So it's on a word-to-word accuracy basis and then a total gist, I call it, accuracy basis. The system is actually more accurate than people. So anyway, it's kind of funny. Let's see, more questions here. Any piggybacks on that, Mike? Any thoughts on those two things before I move on?
No, I think that was good. I think you can move on.
Okay, great. Let's see. What kind of volume is needed to get useful metrics? We have a small sales team and a longer sales cycle because of the complexity. Good question. So that's really up to you, right? In terms of you making large business decisions, obviously you're going to want to see a fair bit of data in the system. I think stats guys will tell you that 5,000 person sample size is good. So that can be a number of calls in a month or a year or a 6-month period or 3-month period or whatever if your call volume is really low. Longer sales cycles and complexity isn't a big issue. It's just we may need to tweak a couple of the algorithms, and they can be customized, by the way. And it depends on what you want to track. So complexity, longer sales cycles, it may be a little harder for us to determine, okay, did they ask open-ended questions? If you're on 7 calls with somebody, by the end of the conversation, you're going to be asking a lot. So that may not be that applicable. But as lead score, absolutely. Is conversion? Absolutely. Is missed opportunity? Absolutely. So you may just need to focus on certain specific metrics as opposed to others for a longer sales cycle. Ryan asked, are these tools available to clients of companies? He names a few companies. Yes, Ryan, I'll email you directly. 2 of those companies, yes. The third one, no, not yet. We're working with them. Yeah, I'll email you directly with an answer to that question. But yeah, so there's a lot of companies that we white label with and partner with. If you're with a company, by the way, that offers standard call tracking or call recording, oftentimes we can actually have those calls, if they meet our audio standards, our recording standards, API'd into our system, and we can analyze them. So there's a lot of ways to get data out of our system, is my point. Or if you're in a call center environment, we can actually upload those recorded calls and analyze them as well. Can data be extracted on calls that drop from 42 to 48 seconds, where IVR delays that may give callers silence and they hang up thinking they were disconnected? Yes. As long as the call is over 30 seconds, we analyze it. So that can, I mean, if you want it longer than that, like if you say as you set this thing up, I don't want to analyze calls unless they're over 90 seconds, that's fine too. But we analyze calls that are 30 seconds and longer in length. So yes, we can. And then it will also, our system will tell you drop calls. It'll tell you, the percentage of time that was silent on the call. So that's a really interesting one for hold times too, to look at. So what about accents, like Hispanic accents, Southern accents, or Australian accents? As long as it's English, it's pretty darn good. It doesn't work in other languages yet, and we don't intend to go that direction for a while. But it still works. I mean, obviously, if you can't understand the person, our system will have a harder time. But generally, we've not experienced any problems with that clients have noticed or that our testers have seen. So that's not a huge issue to this point. When was this tool released is the other question. We released it soft in Q4 of last year, but really started promoting it just a couple of months ago. So we're really in month 3 or 4 of actually promoting it and talking about it and actually having data from it. So it's kind of interesting when you launch a tool like this that no one else is really doing anything like this in terms of gathering this type of data in this way. You kind of don't know how people are going to respond. And so we had to kind of sit back and see what data was useful to our clients and see which data was intriguing before we could really start promoting it heavily. So let's see if there's others. What is the price point? We have plans that are as low as $69 a month and up. So if you're an enterprise level client, obviously there's much larger plans than that for a lot of analyzed calls. I think the $69 plan includes, I'll just look real quick here in my other window, but I think the $69 plan includes basic call tracking, and then also includes let's see how many conversation analytics, like 50 calls, 30 calls analyzed. And then there's other plans that have 500 calls analyzed in a month and unlimited calls analyzed a month. And so it just depends on what you want in terms of pricing. That flow in and out of their systems in a certain way. And so it's usually just a few hours of dev time to create the webhooks and the API to get that set up. So yeah, we integrate with a lot of tools to answer your question. You can see us, just as a conclusion here, it looks like we've dined down on the questions. Please ask them if you have them. You can see us next, for those of you who will be at LeadsCon. We'll be there next month in New York, exhibiting, and then also on a panel about call marketing, hosted by Jay Weintraub, who's the founder of LeadsCon and still runs it, I believe, along with some other call analytics experts. So see us there. It's August 14th, 15th, I think, in New York. So you can see us there if you're going to be at LeadsCon. We'll also be at some other events in the fall. And then, as I said, the main way to get in touch with us is just go to our website, give us a call. We can help you out. And then if you're interested, go to the webinar series. I do want to show that just so you can see our webinar series, because the content's really good. So we started hosting webinars about 18 months ago. We've done several, like 130. And so you can see here's today's. I'll get the recording up shortly. Next week we have a webinar with Conversion IQ. We have a webinar with the search agency, with Hava Lead Tech. She just did a webinar with Moz last week. So we've got a lot of webinars here. You can see them all. Just go to the page 2 and you can find recordings. So anyway, a lot of stuff, a lot of content, ungated for the most part. A couple more questions sent. Jeff asks, is there a minimum conversion rate that makes your lead scoring effective? In terms of your marketing, no, that's up to you. In terms of how our system works, our lead score metric is totally separate from the conversion metric. So our lead score is not connected in any way to whether or not they did or did not convert. It's all about what did they say on the phone, how interested were they. Obviously, higher lead scores are going to have higher conversion rates. Kimberly asked, agents are able to be tracked. Is that just for conversions or as a whole? Both. So what are conversion rates for certain agents? Did they ask for the business? Did they ask open-ended questions? So you can look at that data at an aggregate level if you've got a whole call center environment or something, or you can look at it, excuse me, and slice and dice the data on an individual call level. The thing we wanted to do is we wanted to provide really simple export. So you can export all this data into CSVs in Excel and run pivots on it and do all sorts of fun stuff. So, and then of course there's reports within our system, and we can send the data to your systems with our webhooks and everything else. So, Mike, any final questions that I'm missing, or any thoughts you have before we conclude? Before we let everybody get back to the rest of their day?
No, I think that's pretty good. That's pretty good coverage for all the questions there. I did want to sort of reiterate the value of that webinar series. I've definitely gone through the LogMyCalls webinar series and watched some past webinars. I actually just registered for one now with Asif Khan from the Location-Based Marketing Association. Really interested in that. So definitely, if you've got time, check those out, watch the recordings, or register for upcoming ones. And I also did want to mention that we will also be at LeadsCon next month in New York as well. We're exhibiting, so we'll be there. Definitely stop by the booth and chat with us. And prior to that, we'll be at Affiliate Summit East as well, which is in the same location in New York, in the same hotel and everything as well, on the 10th, August 10th to the 12th. So you can stop by there. I don't have any other questions, but I did want to mention that everyone can check out our blog as well at ringpartner.com/blog, or follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Check us out. And our YouTube channel has quite a bit of information as well on pay-per-call marketing, and you can check that out at youtube.com/ringpartner. And if you wanted to reach out to us, you can email contact@ringpartner.com or call us, because we do like calls, at 1-888-656-3726. And so, if there's any more questions, feel free to answer those, McKay, but I just wanted to thank you for the presentation. I thought it was really insightful, really interesting to hear what happens after the calls. Like you said, we've been tracking up to the point of the call, and then we track the duration, but we haven't really looked into what's happening after that. And so it's really interesting, and I thought it was a great presentation. So thanks for that, and thanks to everyone that attended today.
Mike, thanks for having us. We appreciate it.
Okay, thanks a lot.